On an open paddock on the edge of Mangalore lies the wreckage of a twin-engine plane. In bushland, a few kilometres away, smashed pieces of a second aircraft. It was the result of a mid-air collision that cost 4 lives, including 3 experienced pilots.
Neither plane were incinerated. They've both hit the ground very hard though.
After taking off from Mangalore, one of the planes reached an altitude of 4,000 feet, where it collided with the second aircraft. It was a crash in the clouds in uncontrolled airspace before the pieces of twisted metal tumbled to the ground. It's the sort of accident that experienced pilot Dick Smith had long feared, and it would have been much worse if the planes were larger.
People have been predicting this type of accident that we've had at Mangalore. Only 4 have died. It could have been 100.
Most airports around Australia, outside the big cities and major regional centres, are in what's known as uncontrolled airspace. That means, rather than being directed by a traffic controller, it's up to the pilots to talk to each other to avoid collisions.
If you fly between, say, Sydney and Melbourne, you're flying in controlled airspace the entire time. But if you go to a place like Ballina, from 8,500 feet down, you're in uncontrolled airspace. If you're in cloud, the only way you can prevent a crash is by calling on your microphone and saying, is there anyone there, where are you? And then separating, a bit like a 1930s system.
So in some ways you're flying blind.
You're absolutely flying blind. First of all, when you're in the cloud, you can't see out, of course, but all around the world, an air traffic controller keeps you apart, stops you from crashing. But only in Australia, below 8,500 feet at most of these airports, there's no control at all.
Mangalore is an example of what can happen in uncontrolled airspace, and there could have been more.
How many near misses might there have been?
We've had terrible near misses. We've had 2 airlines in a cloud at Bundaberg on different frequencies nearly crashed into each other. At Orange, we had the Rex plane going in. Another plane was coming in the cloud in the other direction and they nearly hit. So there's been lots of warnings.
Richard Woodward has been flying for 46 years, first in the US Air Force and then for commercial airliners. He's seen the danger here and backs Dick Smith.
When you're flying an aircraft in cloud and you're getting lower to the ground and you're flying instrument approaches and programming the aircraft and complying with checklists, etc., it's quite a busy environment. And the last thing you want to be doing is making broadcasts in the blind to another aircraft out there that you might hit.
20 years ago, the Howard government tasked Mr Woodward with reforming Australia's low-level airspace, but he was stifled because of costs and a lack of will. So the same problems exist all these years later.
It's just not the best safety practice. It sort of drives me nuts that you have this very high-tech air traffic control system. It's quite sophisticated, one of the best in the world, and our procedures don't allow us to use it at the lower altitudes. So you have the capability, but nothing happens.
Dick Smith's adventures are the stuff of legend.
We did it! We can't believe it! We've done it!
How hard was it?
Bloody hard!
Most challenges he takes on, he succeeds, except this one. His most recent plea to the government last month was shrugged off by Transport Minister Michael McCormack, who said in a letter, "I am satisfied with the range of arrangements in place to ensure our approach to airspace management remains safe." Independent Senator and amateur pilot Rex Patrick doesn't share Dick Smith's view either.
I'd be cautious in supporting what he's proposing, and the main reason for that is that we've operated across Australia for decades without controlled airspace at these airports, and we've had very few accidents. And what I don't want to see happen is we burden the industry with additional costs, particularly when general aviation is in fact a struggling industry.
The Civil Aviation and Safety Authority wouldn't be interviewed, but it did confirm the lighter the airport traffic, the less regulated it is, and each airport is assessed on a case-by-case basis.
If you have an accident on a highway in a car, you don't change all of the road rules simply because of one accident. What you have to do is you have to be measured in your response.
The grim reality is that death can lead to change. Dick Smith and his supporters are hoping that's what happens in Mangalore. But CASA won't act until it receives the final accident report, which will be many months away.
Do you fear that there will be more accidents?
Yes, because the system is unresolved and the threat is still there and nothing's changed. This accident in Mangalore is a real wake-up call. Sadly, 4 people have died. I hope they haven't died in vain.
Peter Stefanovic, Sky News.